Time, okay, thanks. Gary's not here tonight. Gary won't be here.
Just want this, I just want this. There it is. Registration.
All right, it's 6 o'clock. Is everyone ready to go? Good evening. It is 6 PM on Wednesday, August 9th, 2023, and we are convening a regular meeting of the Colorado Heights Schools Board of Education. Mr. Muccio, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Decker?
Here.
Mrs. Etter?
Here.
Ms. Prowse?
Here.
Mr. Dobbins?
Here. 4 present, 1 absent. On behalf of the board, I'd like to welcome all students, staff, parents, and interested community members to tonight's Board of Education meeting. The board values and encourages public comment on education issues. Anyone having an interest in the actions of the board may participate in the public comments portion of this meeting. Please identify yourself on the board sign-in sheet. A copy of the board meeting agenda is available to review on our school district's website. Please silence your cell phone during this meeting. Would you join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So may I have a motion to approve this evening's agenda, please?
So moved.
Ms. Decker moves. I'll second. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Etter seconds. Are there any additions, changes, edits? Mr. Evans, Mr. Muccio? No, I
I
hear
have
none.
none.
Hear none, so let's move to a vote, please.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Ms. Prowse? Mr. Dobbins?
Aye, the motion passes 4-0. Comments from the public. I do not see anyone else in the audience tonight for public comments, so we'll move on to agenda item number four, treasurer's business. Mr. Muccio.
Thank you, Mr. Dobbins. Tonight I ask for approval of items 4A, 5A through 5D and the consent agenda.
Great. So may I have a motion to approve the treasurer's consent agenda items, please? Ms. Prowse moves. I'll second. Mr. Muccio, do you have comments on the items here?
Yep, wanted to spend some time on 5A, which is the recap of fiscal year '23. I have a sheet I'd like to pass out for everybody here.
Big sheets.
And on my large spreadsheet with columns and rows, no bar graph, but
I was gonna say, in a number 6 font.
it's small. So this is our whole fiscal year in a nutshell, in one giant sheet. And this sheet's an audit tool, and I just carried it over, coming from that world here. And the way it's set up is at the top, there are columns A through double B. And then on the left-hand side, for all the rows, we have our funds. So the first line would be our general fund, below that permanent improvement, below that food service, Fund 009, which we don't use, but there's a balance. The fiduciary funds, 07, 08, 022, Fund 200, internal service, 014, 024, then our special revenue funds, 018, 019, 300, 451, 467, 499, and then all of our 500 level funds, which are federal grants that we have. We can see in column B, our beginning cash, if we look all the way down, $20,959,000. So that was the total cash for all of our funds going into this school year that we have. At the very top, that first line is our general fund. We started with $16,031,000 in the general fund. Any encumbrances coming over in the next column, column C, we had approximately 1.1 million in encumbrances in all those funds. And then the unencumbered cash balance, so without any purchase orders or anything, taken away from that balance, that amount in column D was $19,841,000. And that's the column that I have to send every year to the Cuyahoga County Budget Commission once we finish the fiscal year, so they know what our true unencumbered cash is, year by year. Columns E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, and N would be what's called our certificates of estimated resources. What that is every time we do an appropriations resolution, I also do that certificate of estimated resources and send that to the Cuyahoga County Budget Commission. So what that does is that estimates our revenue every step of the way. So the first one in column E is done by the county, and they usually do that around May. So we have that one that's done by the county, and then I update it F, G, H, I, J, K. And if we look, we can see below, starting column G, why we would have any changes as we go. And I tick mark it, letters A, B, C, and so forth. We have our total revenue in column O, and if we compare columns O and column N, so column N was the final estimated revenue, and column O would be our actual revenue. So let's see how close we were. So estimated revenues to total revenues. If we look at the bottom number, we can see our total revenues in column O came in at $20,613,000, and our estimate in column N at the bottom was $20,599,000. So pretty much right there,
Yeah.
spot on.
Good job.
Our general fund, we can see at the very top what that estimate was, 17.8 million, and we came in over 18.2. And I'll talk about that. So it led to a little bit more revenue in the general fund than we had predicted, which is good. It's a good thing. If we start looking to the right of the spreadsheet, we can see letters P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X. Those would be all of our appropriations resolutions that we do throughout the year. So the first one in column P is our temporary. So we do that in June. Last year we did it 6/22/22, and that's just to get our temporary resolutions in place for what we're going to spend. And then we change it along the way. So columns Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X would be all of our appropriation resolutions that we have along the way. And again, we just have our tick marks at the bottom for why we would increase or decrease it. A lot of times we have grants that come through. Twice a year we do the 5-year forecast, so I adjust the general fund to match that. So whenever we do an appropriation resolution, I also do a certificate of estimated resource and send that to the county. So always at the same time, I'm always doing it. Let's take a look at the last appropriation resolution. So Amendment 8, which is in column X, and let's compare that to column Y, which is going to be our actual expenditures for the year. So column Y, the total at the bottom would be $20,581,000. And our appropriations for what we could spend, $22,860,000. So we came in lower than what was appropriated, which is, again, also good. We can see our ending cash in column Z. So that's $20,991,000. Any current year encumbrances, and that total was $233,000. And then we can see our ending unencumbered cash in column BB, which is $20,758,000. And that's the number, again, that I would send to the Cuyahoga County Budget Commission saying this is where we ended the year. None of our funds had any negatives, but we did do advances and transfers at the end of the year, just to make sure for presentation purposes that we didn't have any deficits shown in our grant funds. But overall, if we look to where we started the year and where we ended the year, we're in a very healthy position currently. So our history has been good, relatively speaking, in recent history. And at the present point in time, we're in a good spot. But again, we look at the future when we deal with levies and other matters that we have. And we know that there are certain factors that are in place. We know that there's a TPP phase out. We know inflation has been rising. We know that we have capital improvement projects around the district that are popping up moving forward. But we did have a good fiscal year in fiscal 23, I would say. So we're on solid ground. Let's take a look now in particular at the general fund. So if we look at 5A, and I kind of have a small little rundown on the screen, we can see that our total revenue for the year was $18,218,000, and that again matches to the spreadsheet we're looking at here in column O. Our total expenditures were $17,818,000, and that's in column Y. and that gives us a surplus of $400,090 when we compare the two. So if we take our beginning balance, which was $16,031,000, add our surplus of 400, our ending cash balance in column Z would be $16,431,000. So we've had a surplus the past 11 years here at the district.
Where are you finding the $400,000 surplus on here? Is that shown?
No, it's on the top of your computer on,
Right, I remember seeing
Almost.
it.
Yeah,
I
we
thought
would-
it was here somewhere.
Yeah, if we compared column O
Yes,
and column Y, so we
Yes,
would just
okay.
subtract the two, the 18.2 and 17.8,
Yes.
it's about 400,000 right there. And
Okay.
that's our true surplus that we had for the year.
I see that. Mhm.
And if we just look at the general fund, let's open, and I didn't print this one out, but if we all open item T2D. So that's our lead sheet that we have. And
Did you say B or D?
D.
D, thank you.
So this is just the general fund lead sheet, and we have each one of the lines, and it corresponds to the 5-year forecast. So if we look at, and it's set up the same way, letters at the top, numbers on the left-hand side. So for the first, actually the second row, we can say, starts our revenue, and that would be our property taxes on that line. And if we look at column N, which is our total column, 9,824,000, that matches pretty close if we compare it to either our ending budget or our May 5-year forecast. And those are pretty much the same. There's not much of a deviation between the two. So the forecast had 9.7. We came in at 9.8 for property taxes when we compare the two. If we look at our tangible personal property tax, again, which is our PUP, P-U-P-P, Public Utility Personal Property, the railways and electric utility, the 5-year forecast had 2.9, and we actually came out at 2.9, so pretty much spot on. The next two lines would be our state aid, unrestricted and restricted. For unrestricted aid, the 5-year forecast had 533,000. We came in at 532,900, spot on. Below that's our restricted aid. The forecast had 169,000. We came in at 243,000. So about a difference of 70,000, and that's due to more catastrophic aid that we got. Below that, we have our property tax allocation, and that's going to be the homestead and rollbacks. The 5-year forecast had 1.9, and we came in at 1.9 as well. Below that, and we'll take a look at this one in particular, would be all other operating revenue. So the 5-year forecast had 1.8 million, and we came in at 2.1 million. So let's take a look at why that one came in higher than what we had thought it would. So we open that spreadsheet, which is going to be T2G. And we can see at the top that our estimate is the 1.8, and we can see our total to the left of that in yellow is 2.1. So if we go down the row, each of the rows that we have there, we can see kind of the comparison that we have in place. So our tuition's pretty spot on, 600-some thousand, 32,000 for the upcoming year. Below that, we have our SF tuition, pretty much spot on, 289,302. Below that for special education, that's our core place students, 75 and 67,000. But right here is going to be the interest that we receive for the district. So in the estimate, we had 80,000 for Red Tree on line 6 in red, and we came in at 111,000. And then below that, in blue, we had our investments at Star Ohio, and the estimate was just shy of 500,000. I was always hoping to get to 500. So we had 2 more months in the year. I'm like, I think I can get us there. Not only did we get to 500, we got to 600,000. So if we compare both, the 615,000 and the 111, we are over 700,000 in interest. Now keep in mind that we have about 20 million in cash, right? So if I compare our cash to Suburban Health Consortium, and if I look at their interest for what they received for this current year, keep in mind they have 2 more months in their fiscal year. They had, and they have roughly the same amount of cash as us, they got $192,381.22 in interest. We're at over 700,000. So I just wanted to point out, cash management's a huge factor, so that's a big spread between the two employees. So, again, happy that we crossed 500. Once we did, I'm like, I think we can get to 600, so.
Well, congratulations to you and your team for working hard and diligently to try and maximize our idle cash earnings.
And if we
But I
just,
guess it makes sense too, because everybody's making more in their savings accounts these days.
they are,
You know, they were like 1% and 2%, now that some are giving 3%, 4%, and 5%.
Right.
So we benefit from that, so that's good.
yep. So looking at the revenue, that kind of was the big difference that we had in place. Now let's look at the expenditures. If we go back to that T2D, just our general fund. If we look at row 15, that's going to be salaries, personnel services. So the May 5-year forecast had $10,296,000. We came in at $10,070,000, so pretty much right there. Below that row is row 16. That's going to be retirement, our 5-year forecast. In column Q, that May 5-year forecast line, column that we would have is 3.8 million. We came in at 3.7 million for actual, so pretty much right there. Purchase services, that's where we came in lower. So the May 5-year forecast had 3,490,000, almost 3.5 million, and the actual was 2,863,000, so almost 2.9. So that's a difference of about 600,000 right there. So again, we budget high, but those are for utilities and repairs and other services that we would have. And again, we appropriate, we say we have the money there, doesn't mean we have to spend it. So needs, wants, let's be reasonable with our wants, we come in. So that's kind of the difference in the purchase services for what we have. Below that, we have our supplies and materials. 5-year forecast at 759,000, we came in at 517,000. Below that, for capital outlay, it was 130,000, we came in at 82. And the other line items that we had pretty much matched. We didn't have to do one transfer for food service, which is why it helped us on row 27. So the May 5-year forecast at 225,000. Our actual was 150. So all in all, again, we had a surplus of 400,000 at the end of the day. And we kind of look at all those numbers. Any questions on our?
So we had projected that we were gonna spend 19.1 million and we only spent 17.8. Is that what this is saying?
Correct.
Telling me? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Good job to everyone. So those are great numbers. Thank you.
Yep. And then the last spreadsheet I wanted to touch base on would be our grants. If we look at spreadsheet T2Y, so that's going to be our lead sheet for our grants. And it's pretty small again, it's in font size 5, so even smaller than 6. Well, I know, I do zoom in. I use Excel, so it's kind of hard to take it to a PDF copy, but really what I'm trying to do on this spreadsheet is show 2 fiscal years because of the ESSER funds that we have in place. So we don't have to really dive into the details on this sheet, but I just wanted to show everybody that this sheet consists of 2 fiscal years, fiscal 22 and fiscal 23. Bottom half is 23, top half is 22. And along the way, we're managing all of our grants that we have in place. So ESSER 2, which we had completely spent down. A couple of years ago, we spent ESSER 1. So we charged salaries to Brian Freed, the MTSS coordinator for ESSER 2, and that closed that grant out. And we're close on ESSER 3. So we received a little over $600,000 for ESSER 3. We spent this past fiscal year 400-some thousand of that. So we have about 200,000 left for fiscal 24 for ESSER 3. And we charged 2 main aspects to ESSER 3. Salaries for Lindsay Russell, Brian Freed, and Jordan Gentili. And then we had our air conditioning project over at the elementary school. That pretty much ate up about $400,000 of that $600,000 we had from ESSER 3. Below that is just a lot of our other federal grants that we have, our IDEA grant, our title grants that we have in place, Title I, II, and IV. We have our OFCC grants, the 500 funds, those school safety grants, those are $150,000 apiece, so we had 2 of those, add up to $300,000. But it's just a lot of management, making sure what we spend and where we're at, and constantly looking at our carryover to make sure we hit, our our limits met for Title I that we have to hit. We have to go over 85% for that one to qualify for the carryover. And, we're pretty spot on with all of our applications that we submit and the closeout reports that we have. So just wanted to talk a little bit about our federal grants as we go.
Do we have anything that we know of on the horizon that we would be getting either from something unexpected or an addition from the state or the federal government?
We do. We have a surprise coming in my comment section.
Oh,
So I'll hit that up on 7D.
okay.
Mr. Muccio, though,
All right, that's-
Yep.
I just wanted to kind of clarify, my understanding is that a good part of the grant funds that we have not yet spent, that they need to be spent within the next 1 or 2 fiscal years, and that, at least on the horizon, to Mrs. Etter's point, at least I'm not aware of anything big coming down the pike in terms of grant funding, or maybe I'm misunderstanding.
Correct. We don't, we have some coals in the fire for some ones that we've applied for, so hopefully we get those, fingers crossed. We do have one that we did get, and I'll, talk about that one, 7D. And then we do have other carryovers that Mr. Dobbins is talking about. We have our ESSERs that carry over, and we get yearly title grants and idea grants that come to us. So it's kind of a combination of all three that we have in place. So if we kind of close out our fiscal year and go to item 5B, it's just new vendors. We just have a handful coming over. Work injury solutions for job analysis would be the first one. The second one would be the concrete grinding company. Number 3 would be the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Adequacy for School Funding. So kind of a little funny story. The board had passed a resolution to join that lawsuit, so I was getting set to cut the check, and I noticed we didn't have the vendor in the system. So I called Bill Phillis and said, hey, Bill, can you send over your W-9? We got into about a half-hour conversation about, his cause, and it was very great, to listen to all that, and it was just something interesting. When I was ready to cut the check, and we don't have that, so I didn't get it.
Half hour is a short conversation with Bill Phillis.
Yes.
He's just warming up at a half an hour.
And then 4, 5, and 6 would be from Bart, our new bus mechanic coming over from Brecksville. Those are some of the vendors he had used, so we're approving those as new vendors to our district to use those. We close out of here. Next one is just purchase orders over 5,000. We just have 3. We open that. First one's Ohio Schools Council. So that's an additional blanket purchase order for natural gas for 30,000. Let's talk about that a little later, and I'll look at the next 2, and then we'll go into detail on that one. The second one is just our annual SERS surcharge. So that's calculated by SERS. The surcharge is an additional employer charge based on the salaries of the lower paid SERS members. It is exclusively used to fund health care. The surcharge is calculated at 14% of the difference between the employee's annual compensation amount and the minimum compensation amount, which is determined annually by SERS actuaries. So that was $38,224.82. It's comparable to what we have every year. And the third one is just our Pay Schools lunch system, $6,625. So if we go back to that first one from Ohio Schools Council, let's close out of here and let's open item T4A. So I have an email as the second attachment from Bill Zealy, who is the executive director of Ohio Schools Council, and in it he explains why there's an increase in natural gas. And I have highlighted in orange that so he goes, Matt, I'm writing the follow-up in your conversation with Barb Del Rosso. I hope that you find this email helpful. Please feel free to contact me if you need any additional information. So he goes on to explain about why there's an increase, and I've highlighted there that he goes, while the new Ohio Schools Council 2-year natural gas price is approximately 55% higher than our previous price, it is still very competitive. He goes, a significant reason for the 55% increase is related to the fact that our previous 2-year contract price through June 2023 was substantially lower than the industrial price to compare due to forward planning of the Ohio Schools Council Natural Gas Program. That's the tongue twister. But basically, he says in short that there are just a lot of factors that contributed to inflationary aspects that increased natural gas that we have. So we're seeing industry wide utilities go up for natural gas, and this is just catching up with us. So Ohio Schools Council had planned, and we locked in lower rates previously, and now we're just kind of getting back into the middle of the pack with everybody for utilities and as inflation's going. So if we're looking at a approximately 55% increase this year, we did a purchase order for 60,000. And if we're saying it's going up half of that, additional 30,000, that's why we see this PO for 30,000 to get us to 90 in total. So that's why we're putting that on. If I close out of this, and then last for approval is just an agreement with SC Strategic Solutions. This amount is $1,000, and what it does is it lets us take all of our revenue side and we can make that digital. So we can upload it to our system, make it easier for the auditors to take a look at all of our receipts that we have to go through, easier to file and sort and organize. For $1,000, we thought that was almost a slam dunk going forward.
Is there also an aging aspect to this, where ARs are aged in this?
There can be.
Okay. I don't know if that was part of what we were purchasing or not.
Yeah, it allows us to have accounts receivable. We can make our own invoices. We do that, but we have this will give us a better system to organize that, receipts, and then any refunds that we would issue for school lunches for students, for example. So it automizes. Makes it automatic.
Very good. Well, again, Mr. Muccio, congratulations to you and your team, and actually to the entire CHS team for working together to try and optimize our revenues and minimize our expenditures, but still ensure that our kids get an outstanding education, and that's what you've been doing, so thank you.
Yeah, it's a team effort. Mr. Evans, Mr. Young, Board of Education, all staff that we have here. So team effort with all.
I just wanted to kind of circle back to one of your slides or one of your comments in that
Yep.
5A, where you kind of do a synopsis or a summary of the surpluses we've had for the last 11 years.
Yes.
It seems that in spite of us having had a surplus for this past fiscal year, that the overall trend has been declining. Is that a fair?
The amounts.
Yep.
Yeah, that the.
And that kind of has, that's really two factors, I would say. You have inflation, constantly going up, so our revenues are stagnant, let's say, for
Right.
example. Our expenses we know are rising, but we also know that the TPP phase-out is taking away our revenue at a slow pace as well. So any small gains we would have is kind of countered by that TPP phase-out. Yet inflation's going up, and it has been going up very fast recently, so.
We're going back to that summary that you have there in that, in the text for 5A.
Yep.
The last time the district ran a deficit, was that in fiscal year 12 I'm seeing, and was that just prior to the passage of the most recent levy?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, thanks for explaining that.
And that's all I have for the items for approval tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Muccio. Nice presentation. With that, we can move to a roll call vote, correct?
Ms. Prowse?
Aye.
Mr. Devens?
Aye.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Mrs. Ed?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Again, thank you, Mr. Muccio. Moving on to agenda item number, well, I guess we 7. Sorry, your discussion and comments.
Yep, just have a couple items for discussion. 7A, so our gap conversion has started, so we contract with the Auditor of State's office on our gap conversion, and just wanted to let everybody know that that's off to a fast start, so. Item 7B, Suburban Health Consortium. So this past Monday, Mr. Evans and myself went to the Suburban Health Consortium meeting in which we voted on a rate increase. So on Monday, 8/7/2023, the Suburban Health Consortium voted to approve an insurance, which is medical and prescription drug, rate increase of 13%. There were 2 recommended scenarios by the SHC Executive Committee and consultants, one for 13% rate increase and the other for a 14.7% rate increase. During the meeting, it was discussed how much of a difficult financial year the Suburban Health Consortium had. Costs are rising due to inflation and more procedures being done. Just for context, we had a 6.7% rate increase last year, and the Suburban Health Consortium still had a deficit of approximately $6 million this year. In the past 2 years, the Suburban Health Consortium has lost $15 million. The goal of the 13% rate increase is to raise cash levels to $18 million for 2024. We hope we hit that. Below, I just have a small little snippet of the past couple of years for rate increases. So 13%, 6.7, 2, 0, and about 4. And then what the cash balances have been. 16 million as of right now, and there's 2 months to go in the fiscal year for Suburban Health Consortium. 22 million, 31, 30, and 20. So we're at our lowest point in quite a while for the consortium. So this year, coming into it, the 23-24 year, is a very important year for us monitoring where the consortium goes. So next year might be, if we don't hit our goal, which is 18 million, and we have another difficult year financially, it's going to be a lot of questions and discussions that take place. And then also too, at the very bottom, Suburban Health Consortium is currently exploring a switch for medical insurance providers from Medical Mutual of Ohio to another provider. Mr. Evans, was there anything you wanted to add about that meeting?
Just that the state requires that they have they carry a $9 million cash balance. That's the law. They said the preference is to be up around 30 million. They had a consultant there that has explored Anthem as an alternative, and they're projecting a 6% savings for 24-25. The problem with the switchover is that's very time consuming. In other words, that will take a year plus to do it, even if we could get to a consensus with all the schools in the consortium. So that's a very time consuming process. And then once it happens, it's very time consuming internally for Matt and his office and our staff to flop it on over. But if there's that kind of savings with Anthem, then I think from what I hear from the consortium, the group that was there, is that there's some interest in going that way. And I just have, with these kind of rates, I think there'll be more, traditionally this is a meeting that the treasurers go to, but when these numbers popped up, Matt had come to me and said, listen, so I called some other superintendents, and I just think that this is one that there's going to be some big decisions to be made. Superintendents need to be there. This has a serious impact on our collective bargaining agreements as well, because we're obligated for our coverage and with our collective bargaining agreement. So this is a big impact on us. So some districts are a little more concerned about it than others, quite honestly. I can't understand not being concerned about it. I don't know what kind of financial situation you'd be in where there were these types of numbers didn't bother you as a treasurer. So I don't know. This is phase one of what looks to be something that's going to be ongoing here for a while. So.
Is there jeopardy of Medical Mutual not sustaining it?
No, Medical Mutual is fine. They're just, but the description was that Medical Mutual, especially in Northeast Ohio, was the provider,
Right.
and that nobody else could compete with them. And that field's kind of getting leveled a little bit from what the description was, and Anthem's now can be a little bit more competitive. As I talked to my wife, who's a healthcare professional, about it last night, she said that's all well and good, but Medical Mutual is still the big dog. I mean, they have the broadest coverage, and Anthem, while maybe getting better, she said that it's not the and the big concern for staff members are out of network. When you make a flop over, say all my physicians were in network, and now I have to look to see are they in network and that. And then there's also some negotiation to do. I think if Anthem knew that X number of providers at the Cleveland Clinic were part of the consortium, that they would work to. But again, that's a process. That's not a click of a finger. That's not a snap of a hand. That's an ongoing. The way that they're contracted with the provider. So.
Mr. Muccio, just to clarify, my understanding is that when you've prepared our 5-year forecast, that you've forecasted a particular rate of expense or expenditure for healthcare. Could you kind of briefly summarize what we've been projecting?
We have 12%.
Okay,
for
so
every year.
pretty close to what this is going to shake out at. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, so I don't foresee any problem for us hitting that mark. So.
Okay.
And then also too, just to add to it, we did have a healthcare cost committee meeting on HSAs, health savings accounts. We've been talking about that for, I want to say, over the summer, Mr. Dobbins and Ms. Prowse. That may lead to, a negotiated new option to add HSAs. So that'll be something we'll be talking about in the future too. So just wanted to put that out there.
Talk a little bit more in executive session about it. Just what some of the numbers look like. So both union leaderships came to me this week to discuss it with me, and I said, well, quite honestly, this is a conversation that I won't really drive because Mrs. Prowse and Mr. Dobbins were in the meetings. This is one where I think you guys heard the same information. You can drive that information, but I kind of got a feel for where they're at on this. So.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
And just two more items for discussion. The first, I just want to congratulate Mr. Young and Mr. Evans for the Stronger Connections Grant. So this is a new competitive grant that we were awarded. Now, it's 99.9% there because DeWine had announced it, but OD has not approved it yet. So I do not have the approval letter from OD, so that's why we can't recognize it officially, but DeWine announced it. It is 5,000. Do you want to talk about that?
It has to be used for very specific purposes. With our application, we were looking at PBIS, and we were looking at the whole child and student wellness, maybe some professional development for staff on cultural responsiveness and some things like that. We did that 2 years ago. Thought about partnering with the Diversity Center to provide some optional professional development for our staff, and that would be covered by the grant.
And then the last item, 7E, would be a new auxiliary services fund coming to us. So if we click on that, I got a phone call August 1st from Jack Naris. He's our area coordinator for Cuyahoga County for ODE, the Ohio Department of Education, that we will have a charter non-public school in our district boundaries, and that entity is New Story for fiscal '24. So a charter non-public school is a private school that holds a valid charter issued by the State Board of Education and maintains compliance with the operating standards of Ohio schools. These schools are not supported by local or state tax dollars and require the family to pay tuition. Charter non-public schools are eligible for administrative cost reimbursement, auxiliary services program, and transportation services for students. We will be receiving what is called auxiliary service funds. Jack Naris said that amount could be approximately $10,000 to $30,000 for fiscal '24. Recently, there was an adjustment in law in which charter non-pubs could receive their funding directly. However, Jack Naris said New Story did not meet the timeline to apply for this at that point in time. So that means for us, money is given to New Story via Ohio Department of Education that passes through us. So we're the pass-through entity for money for this chartered non-public New Story. So they get money, but OD can't give them money, so they have to give it to a school that's within their boundaries, which is us. So they give us money for them. That's how it works. So
We don't benefit by anything in
No.
any way.
Well, quite honestly, we did. We had a student there last year. So initially, I wasn't aware of that, and after talking with Mr. Burek and because it's listed as an independence.
That's what I was gonna ask.
New Story,
What?
it's listed as an independence, but because of the zip code. So New Story has 4 locations in the state of Ohio: Sandusky, Independence, they list Lancaster, and someplace else, and they're nationwide. This is strictly special needs, severely handicapped special needs kids. They are actually right off of Brook Park Road,
Oh,
between,
Lancaster, it looked like.
yeah, right off Lancaster. It's a little, picture looks like a little strip. I actually drove by it. I was ironically telling somebody that's that's where Doug Corlett died. That's where the tractor rollover took place. Mark and I remember that fateful day. But it's a small place. We did have a student there last year. That student graduated this year, so we just tied some of this together. So essentially, Mr. Muccio kind of acts as treasurer for.
So it's actually Brooklyn Heights, not Independence?
It's actually Brooklyn Heights,
Okay.
yeah. It's
Okay.
in Brooklyn Heights.
Is that why we didn't do it last year, because they thought it was independent?
No, I just no, because I think the timing of the way the funding came through.
I don't think they didn't fill out the paperwork
Yeah,
properly.
they hadn't.
They
The
didn't
state.
fill out the paperwork properly, so
Yeah.
it didn't show up on our radar.
Got it.
This is common for most every
So we
suburban
have to
school
do,
district.
we have to maintain this money, or the money funnels through us. We just do it as a courtesy to?
Well,
for
it's
them?
not courtesy. That's
It's
the way
a
ODE has it
directive?
set up as a
Right.
directive.
Right.
A directive from
ODE
but
says you
we
will.
don't get any benefit,
No.
we don't get any,
Well, no, we don't get direct benefit, but as Mr. Evans said, should they use their allocation for professional development for their staff, then any training that staff receives can benefit a student that may go there as the student did
Yeah.
last year. So, if you were in Akron, you would be paying Akron-Hoban, St. Vincent St. Mary, Immaculate, all the middle schools, all the private schools. This is not uncommon. This has been going on for years. We've just been fortunate to not have, to account for that. So.
Yeah, so we essentially manage this money for New Story. If New Story overspends their money, it's required to be paid back, so we must monitor their budget with them so that they don't go over. If New Story does not spend all of the money it's required to give back to ODE, the budget is on a 2-year basis, fiscal '24 and '25, and the bookkeeping is done through us and a new fund, which will be Fund 401, so we'll see that coming up ahead. And financial reporting is due to ODE regarding these funds. So the next steps would be to meet with New Story to discuss their fiscal '24 funding, create a budget and procedures for purchasing for them on the horizon. And that's all I have for tonight.
Plenty. Thank you very much, Mr. Muccio. Thank you. Good presentations. With that, we can move on to agenda item 8, superintendent's business.
Okay, I ask the following items be approved in the consent agenda. Section 8, motions A through E. Section 9, motions A and B. Section 10, motions A through F. Section 11, motion A. And Section 12, motions A and B. I ask that those items be approved on the consent agenda.
So I'll make a motion to approve the superintendent's consent agenda items. Could I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Ms. Decker seconds. Mr. Evans?
Okey-doke, let me scroll back up here. The bus routes, and I was glad I kind of put them out in a draft last week because we had some people that weren't on the bus routes because they hadn't filled out some paperwork. So, so I think that kicked some people, got some people got a little bit moving then because they want their kids picked up. So that was a good thing. And I know Mr. Young's been diligently working with the transportation department virtually every day this week. So. The motion to make adjustments to the tuition, that's the same motion as last year. Again, I keep the board notified of those adjustments if and when I have to make those adjustments. Approval, the superintendent to approve tuition-free attendance per the Chase guidelines for ESC employees. In the past, the motion read Chase and ESC. We wanted to parcel that out because Chase now has it in the collective bargaining agreement. So we wanted to make sure that the ESC, and that's something we've permitted for probably the last 6 or 7 years as well. Disposition of some class funds from the class of 2003. Update the administrative supervisory exempt classified employment schedule of benefits. There was I think an item as it got printed a couple times, they got left out, came to Mr. Muccio's attention, so we added that on the benefit package there. Resignations of Christine McCullum and Shelley Rushing. Christine McCullum's acquired a full-time teaching job, so we wish her the best. And Shelley Rushing, I believe, is no longer going to be a bus driver. I think she's got a different line of work now, from the way I read that.
Yeah, she's got a different employment outside.
Yep. The supplemental contracts for chat, the miscellaneous supplemental positions, miscellaneous pay rate contracts. On B, employment of Leanne Candow as long-term substitute teacher building sub for 23-24. We've, as of right now, we know we have 4 pregnancies.
6.
Or 6, I'm sorry. I think I told you 4 last week. So Leanne will be, she can't handle all 6, but just that cuts out a big chunk. And Leanne formerly taught here and then took some time off to raise her children. And so it's nice to have Leanne back. Approve Logan Diedrich, IT support specialist intern for 23-24. You've seen Logan on there before. We kind of did it as a summer intern, and then there's a part. But so now we roll Logan into a contract. He's done a fantastic job for you. And the board members, many years ago, we talked about my desire to add an additional person to our IT staff. We talked about the internship way of doing that. Logan's been a great asset to us as an intern. And in the junior year, Cleveland State, Logan, you're in it, or?
Junior year, Tri-C.
Oh, Tracy, okay, very good. So, I revised the contract for Jim Zerbola to account for, it was an anomaly. He had been paid a, career increments. He had been paid career increments. It just came to the attention of the Treasurer's Office that it's not in his individual contract, so I put it back and I added it. So, as needed contract for Jay Kiefer, interim elementary principal, to get us up and running here. Substitute teacher list just came over. Agreement with Cintas. uniform rental, and we've really kind of cut back on what we're getting from Cintas. I think it's pants for a couple and then shirts for the mechanic, but also a lot of our runners and rugs are done by Cintas as well. A memorandum of understanding between the school and Chase on uniforms. If you look at the uniform part of the Chase contract, it's probably 4 pages because it's X number of dollars for a pair of boots and it's X number of shirts and it's very cumbersome for the treasurer's office. So the treasurer's office sat down with Chase and with Mr. Young, and we came up with just some stipends. So from this point forward, with this MOU, they'll get, and this is good that we're doing it now because this is kind of a trial year. We can negotiate in the spring. The MOU doesn't automatically carry in if we need to make adjustments to it at that time. But this streamlines Mrs. Martin chasing people around to find out if they got 5 shirts or 6 shirts and things of that nature. So I ask that those items be approved. Any questions on any of those items? I'm sorry.
No, I don't have any. If there's no other comments or questions, then let's move to a roll call vote.
Mr. Dobbins?
Aye?
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Ms. Prowse?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Mr. Evans, comments?
Just the Brooklyn Heights Park dedication on Sunday, very well attended. I want to thank Mr. Tartera, Coach Martin, all of our kids that came out for that. They put on a little basketball clinic. The Saunders family came in. It was really, really nice event. And Brooklyn Heights hasn't done home day for a number of years, so they had some blow-up stuff down there. Mr. Dobbins was in attendance. Did you get a chance to talk to Debbie and
I did,
and
yes.
Ryan also?
Great family.
Mark Termini is Flip's agent. He's in town here, so talked to Mark quite a bit. If you know the Termini name, his brother Mel's children are Cuyahoga Heights graduates, so Mel's a former guidance counselor from Independence. So just a good day. Thank Mayor Mike for involving us in that affair. Getting ready for the start of school. Things are kind of gearing up, and this is one of those where it's going to happen whether you're ready or not, so you might as well be ready. But we're working hard. Teachers are back in the building. Had a really good meeting with the chief and the fire marshal today. There's been some changes, and so we have to work on some safety issues. Matt talked about grants. The safety grant, Matt and I are going to sit down. We're going to be ordering new radios. We're going to put a repeater on top of the building that'll give us better radio coverage throughout the district. I've got a quote on door film. I need to make sure that the door film quote is up to date. And a lot of these safety issues that came up with the fire marshal, we can cover through some of the safety grants. It just happens to kind of fit right now as we do that. And a lot of these are a result of our conversation with Ken Trump. Ken Trump was here with Channel 19 in the spring. I talked to him a little bit. I said, would you be willing to come back in? He did. He came back in. We spent about 3 hours with him one day going through some safety things. And actually, it was very encouraging to have Ken here because he said he says all the gadgets and gizmos are all good. He goes, but the number one way to keep people safe is with people. See something, say something, because that's where the breakdowns occur. And we've got a great history of that. Our kids are, the issues that we've kind of dealt with have all been generated through a phone call from a student saying something to somebody, or a phone call from a parent giving us a heads up on some things. So we're very fortunate that we've been able to stay ahead of things that way. So, and it's just a super non-exact science. Some of the schools that went out and bought these huge metal detectors and all these things. He said that those are, and there's so many different ways around those things that it's not. Like he was telling us that one school that had an incident, it picked up guns, but it didn't pick up knives. So it was like when the news came out, they said, well, they found out that nobody got him with a gun, but they got him with a knife. So it's like that seems a little crazy to me, but so that was a good day, and we'll continue to talk to Ken. I think he's kind of excited working with us a little bit. So a lot of safety things going on that we're kind of dressing up the building and getting ready to go. Seniors are out painting their parking spots, kind of fun. We got that in time. Friday nights, our kind of a preview scrimmage with Cleveland Central Catholic. This is one where the FCA does a little event afterwards, and then Mr. Young and I will get our aprons on, and we'll cook about 150 hamburgers for both teams as the teams kind of get together afterwards and break a little bread, and it's a really good event for us.
What time do they start? What time is the beginning?
7.
And then you're gonna eat afterwards?
Yes. No need before. No, no, no. We gotta hose down the turf then. Just, some of the things are still shaking themselves out. Just from a personal experience, the whole voucher thing is gonna be a debacle for the state of Ohio, because my granddaughter's eligible, so I sat and watched my stepdaughter go through the filling out of the voucher process. It's gonna be, first and foremost, it's gonna be impossible for the state of Ohio to check or evaluate the applications, and this is money that's just gonna flow with no control. There's gonna be no controls over this. This is, in my opinion, this is a train wreck waiting to happen. And the third part about this is, unless you have an accounting background, it's darn near impossible to fill the paperwork out. So I know that a lot of the parochial schools are inviting the parents in to sit down with their personnel to go through and help them fill this stuff out. So the voucher, the passage of the voucher expansion is gonna be a nightmare for the state of Ohio. And this, I hate to say it, but this smells to be way worse than ECOT ever was. Because this is not one entity, this is gonna be multiple entities. And I know that several schools, because we have a teacher whose student is in a parochial school, so they knew they were getting the voucher money, so the person filled it out, and they always pay the balance in cash, because they weren't getting the full amount. And they said, well, no, the amounts, we raised the price of the tuition. They said, well, so you got the voucher money, which is what we had talked about beforehand,
Yep.
so here's a school that's done it already. And they said, oh, but don't worry, you won't pay more than you paid last year. So they're gonna adjust, so they're gonna take advantage of the
Do the
funds.
parents get the check in the mail, or is it go right to the school?
No, it's gonna be funded through the schools, because it goes to OD. There's no way, OD can't handle what they have in front of them right now. These are going to OD. I got a feeling they're gonna go into somebody's inbox, and I can't imagine them ever getting looked at. It's
And then
just,
verifying that student's enrolled and all that.
all,
Yeah.
none of those things are in place right now. None of those checks or balances are in place.
Person just could put anything
Financial
down.
accountability, there's no academic
Right.
accountability. There's no accountability for equitable access to the program. So, Tony Potagill, who's head of the Alliance of High Quality Education, Mr. Evans talks about it a lot, said that this is just a bunch of civil suits just waiting to happen.
And that's really what it's gonna be. There's gonna be I can just see just a huge rash of, because the State Department's changing too. No longer do we have a state superintendent.
Right.
We will have a state superintendent, but all they're gonna be in charge of is licensure. So the governor's appointee is now gonna oversee operations of the department, Ohio Department of Education, which is, I sat with a room full of superintendents last week at the Martha Holt. By the way, thank the board. That was a phenomenal event, the 2 days. Great professional development. Just a really great event over at the Marriott. And but there's a lot of highfalutin superintendents in there that said that they wouldn't touch that position with a 10-foot pole, because it's just like another good looking like staring on the barrel of another disaster. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Well, to your point, I think that one of the anti-voucher coalition's emails this week was addressing their concern, or with publicized concerns about the statewide program that's been implemented in Arizona. And I guess it might be one step ahead of here in Ohio, and it doesn't look good. Well, thank you for that update. Do you have anything else, Mr. Evans?
That was more than enough.
Oh, that was funny, thank you. So I see that there's an agenda item 15 for board consent agenda approval, but I don't see we have any motions, so I'm going to pass right by that. Discussion 16, as any board members have any items they'd like to discuss or comment on this evening? Hearing none. I would just note, as Mr. Evans said, that I did attend the Brooklyn Heights Parks dedication ceremony, and Mrs. Sanders and her son and Mr. Termini were there. And I do note that, tying it back to our school, that family and the foundation were very generous to our school relative to improvements made in the gym, so I thank them for that. If there are no other items for discussion, I'm going to move to agenda item 17, which is a motion to move that the board adjourn to executive session pursuant to ORC sections 121.22G1, for the purpose of considering the evaluation of the superintendent and treasurer, and ORC Section 121.22G4, preparing for conducting or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Ms. Decker seconds. No discussion. Move to a vote, please.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mrs. Decker.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Ms. Press.
Motion passes 4-0. It's 6:54 PM. We are adjourning to executive session, and no action will be taken
No action when we
after-
come out, yeah.
No action will be taken after we reconvene. Thank you.
Run out of the restroom real quick.